Hello, Internet! Gino, aka That Pinguino, here again with another deep look. This time, I'm taking a look at Grim Fandango for the PC, PS4, and PS Vita. And the reason why I'm taking a look at Grim Fandango today is to show off the different ways that it uses transitions and reuses locations in order to show the slow corruption of the Land of the Dead. And also kind of enhances its film noir story. So, if you're not familiar with Grim Fandango, it stars Manny Calavera, a Grim Reaper slash travel agent who collects souls from the land of the living in the way that Grim Reapers do. He puts on a robe and takes out a scythe and he collects the souls of the living, or the recently dead, and carries them down into the underworld, at which point he tries to sell them sweet packages and deals to help them on their travels towards the ninth underworld or heaven. So, when a soul comes down to the underworld, Manny is able to look at them and see what sort of crimes and sins and evils might be on their conscience and on their soul. Depending on how good the soul is, he's able to offer different travel packages. So, souls that are very, very good get a trip on the number 9 train that takes 4 minutes to get to the afterlife. Souls that are worse get stuff like shoved in a coffin and then covered in packing foam and then shipped. Underworld UPS. Some people get just a walking stick and have to walk 4 years to get to the afterlife. However, Manny starts to notice that, one, all of his good clients are starting to disappear. He's not getting offered good clients anymore. All of his clients have to either walk or take one of the lesser modes of travel. And also that once he finally does get a good client, Mercedes Colomar, or Meche for short, she's basically a saint and he cannot get her a ticket on the number 9 train. And so Manny starts to think that there's something fishy about the way the Department of Death, or the DOD, is operating. And so he starts to go out to investigate, to find Meche, who begins her journey towards the ninth underworld on foot, and to find out what is going wrong with the Department of Death. So, in his journey, you start out in El Maro, which is a giant city at basically the base where everyone starts on their trip towards the afterlife. Where I am now is Rubacava, which is a city, if you're going on foot, it is the next big stopping point for your trip towards the end point. And Rubacava is a port town. It is where you have to generally wait for a boat to come and carry you all the way to the other side of the world on Porto Zapato, at which point, once you get there, you start walking and you eventually get to the gates of heaven. Now, Rubacava, you can see in this part, this is the first time you visit Rubacava, the first time you see it. The outside is completely foggy, there's almost nothing there. In here, there's a rest stop where you meet Celso, another soul that you help on their way towards the afterlife. Celso's another person who's waiting, looking for someone, looking for his wife. People come to Rubacava largely to wait for other people who they would like to take the journey to heaven with, or they're waiting for a boat to come and take them to Porto Zapato. Rubacava is largely, at least at this point, shown to you as a place where people stop on a larger journey to heaven. There's no real reason to stop completely in Rubacava. This is also shown by the actual building that you're waiting in. You meet Celso in what looks like a rest area. If you're familiar with driving on highways, you can usually see on the side of the highway rest stops that look something like this. Little diners, perhaps some light shopping, but by and large, just a place where you're sitting, you're waiting till you feel better so you can get back on the road, or you're waiting, sleeping, just getting some food, and then continuing your journey. And this is how Rubacava looks very early on in the game. The only people that you meet here in this first moment, this first glimpse of the city, is a ship captain. Again, makes total sense. It's a person who's going to help you get on your way, on your journey, and Celso. Otherwise, the place is completely abandoned, covered in fog. You can't even explore further to the left. there's just two areas. This one where you and Glottis wait, and then the rest stop. So it makes sense that Rubacava takes this function. If you're looking at the journey to the afterlife as the central goal of the souls that are wandering the land of the dead. If the stop on Rubacava is just a stopping point on a larger journey, makes total sense that this place is just a rest stop. However, Rubacava does not stay this way. They actually reuse this location, and I'm actually going to right about to get up to the transition point. After that transition, it becomes clear that there is something very, very wrong with the world of the dead, the land of the dead, and that corruption and crime and vice are starting to find their way into the land of the dead. And so here's the transition. Manny gets a job at this rest stop. He starts out as a mop boy. He takes over Celso's position. And this transition is actually remarkably well done. They pull out and then start looking up at the sky, at which point, see, blue sky, sunny sky, a little bit of fog, but there's basically nothing around that rest stop. 1 year later, it's nighttime, so we get the transition from day to night, and it is neon lit. The diner is now the Calavera Cafe. Manny is now the owner of the place. He's got a cigarette. He's got a suit, a cigarette. He's waiting.
Hey, boss.
He's the boss. So we can see in this one transition how the complete function of Rubacava just does a complete 180. Rubacava, when you first get there, is just a waiting point on a larger journey. There's no real reason to stay there, and there is nothing there to stay for. There's nothing keeping you there. Now that you're in kind of a year later version of Rubacava, it's a place full of gambling. It's a place full of vice. It is no longer just a bump in the road to someone's journey. It is now a reason to stay. It now has tons of reasons to stay in this city indefinitely, which does not make sense if you think of the journey through the land of the dead as being entirely about getting to heaven. The entire structure of the afterlife is rethought in this transition, and it's really subtle and really interesting. I think it's the way that they subtly use changes like this is just exceptional in Grim Fandango. El Morro, the first place you visit, eventually becomes New Morro, which is kind of, it transitions from a city where people start their journey to the afterlife and turns into kind of a Las Vegas where people come and never leave. And you can see that one of the main themes of Grim Fandango is basically crime lords, people trying to amass just large amounts of wealth within the underworld and trying to make the underworld more bearable and more livable rather than trying to move on and find salvation some other place. And you can see how those criminals impacting the land of the dead impacts everyone else. So not only are people starting to get trapped there, but they're starting to fall into gambling. They're starting to fall into all sorts of other, like, I don't know that there is drinking. Drinking starts to become more prevalent. People are smoking. There's a lot more gambling. There's murder, or it's called sprouting. You get shot with flowers. And the amount of criminality just gets ratcheted up every single jump ahead in time. And you can see how that changes the type of people you interact with. At first, you're interacting with travelers that are trying to move forward and move towards the Ninth Underworld. And over time, you start dealing with lawyers. You start dealing with degenerate gamblers. You start dealing with organized crime members. And so, union workers. And the film noir nature of Grim Fandango's story starts getting brought out clearer and clearer as these locations get revisited, as you start meeting new characters, and as the tone changes as the locations change. So it's actually really subtle. Even though Rubacava changes complete 180, it's not like they send you to another location that's seedy. They take the locations that you become familiar with based on your earlier interactions, and then undermine them and change them the next time you go there. So like before, I couldn't even come down to this area in Rubacava, the Blue Casket. All of these different locations did not exist a year earlier, or at least there was no way to see them. Now there's this elevator system that takes you up. I'm actually right next to the Calavera Cafe, but you would never have known that this other area, this other zone full of nightlife even existed. See, this is where Glottis was waiting just a year earlier. And now there's a neon sign that directs you towards the casino. You get other elements. You get, like I said, there's tons of gambling. There's a cat track, all sorts of other stuff. There's a morgue that you can actually visit. Yeah, if you go down there, there's a morgue. There are crime bosses. There's a lawyer you interact with, a corrupt lawyer, of course. And over here, there's even a gigantic flying zeppelin. So, by using Rubacava again instead of coming up with another city, the developers of Grim Fandango were able to communicate a slow decline in the Land of the Dead in a way that completely inventing new locations would not have been able to communicate. It is showing you the world descend into criminality by making you live in it and then see how it has changed. And that is just excellent storytelling. I really appreciate it. I didn't know what to expect when I first played Grim Fandango, but it turns out it's really, really good and really, really dark. So, hope you enjoyed this look at Grim Fandango. The whole game is excellent. Little dated here and there, but the story holds up, and the characters hold up, and that's what's really important. So, till next time, I leave you with this gigantic cat litter box. Peace!